Good morning, folks. Welcome to Transplant Helper again today. My name is Jim Burrell, and today I'm going to be asking you a question that I hear pretty often, and that is, how much Prograf do you take? Now, with me asking that question, let me go ahead and clarify. I really don't think that's a very good question to be asking. Now, I'm not exactly sure why we ask that. I do believe, however, in many cases, I know in mine in the past, I may ask someone how much Prograf or Myfortic or some other medication that they take, because inadvertently I'm trying to decide how well I'm doing versus how well they are doing. Now, that's not for competition. That's just to try to gauge where I am. Honestly, though, I want to tell you, I believe that is the wrong question to ask, okay? Because a judgment of how well we're doing should not be based on how much medication that we take. Now, obviously, someone who's on, say, 65 milligrams of Prograf is probably having a more difficult time than, say, someone that's on 5 milligrams, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily doing better. And that's for pretty good reason, and this kind of relates to nearly all of our medications, by the way, but it really has to do with the fact that your dosage does not directly correlate or match up with, what the blood level is or what the levels found in your blood work might be, okay? And it may be that your doctors are just trying to keep you at a different level than, say, someone else. I know, for example, when I first came out of transplant, the doctors liked to keep me at a Prograf level of about 15 as they measured. However, since that time, they put me in kind of a more baseline area where they like to keep me between about 9 and 12. As a matter of fact, more times than not, and this has probably been about 3 years now, I've been sitting at a level 3. I'm sorry about that. I'm not exactly sure why I told you a minute ago on this video that my Prograf level was a 3. That's absolutely not true. I'm sitting at a level 11 on my Prograf level. Otherwise, if I was a 3, they'd probably be quadrupling my dosage every single time they check me. And that's really kind of right where they want me to be, kind of right in the middle there. And so because of that, yeah, I can assume I'm doing pretty well. However, it may be the case that your doctors like your Prograf level to be a little higher, a little bit lower than that, maybe even outside of that range a little bit, and that's just fine. But that does not directly correlate, again, with how much Prograf you're taking, because our different body types, our different makeups, our different bodies' ways of absorbing things, things like your diet, things like how much exercise you put forth, all of those things can be factors and variables into deciding how much Prograf it takes as far as the dosage goes, how many pills you pop, and where that level needs to maintain or will maintain itself. So I just want to let you know that I don't think asking the question, how much Prograf do you take, is really the appropriate question. Maybe a better question might be more like, what's your Prograf level? And again, there's still some variable there. Each doctor, each team may want you at a different place, but I think in general, a 9 to 12 is probably pretty standard. Now, with all that said, let me give you a couple of tips you can use in order to make sure that your Prograf level is maintained the best that it can be. Because again, I know in my past and in most of our past, it may be that getting that Prograf level right in the beginning and getting it to be consistent is probably the most difficult part. And so, number one, basically, make sure that any changes that you make to your medications are well noted by your physicians. Now, I never encourage anyone just to go out and start taking supplements or to go out and start taking vitamins or pills or anything like that all on their own. Their team always needs to know about that, but even when that occurs, make sure that you check with your team and say, hey, look, if you start me on, say, supplement like vitamin D, maybe you found out you're a little deficient in vitamin D, and most of us are, maybe they start you on vitamin D. Go ahead and ask them, will this affect some of my other blood work? Do you think this is possible that it might throw off, for example, in our discussion, Prograf? Will it mess me up? And if they say no, then maybe they're right. Again, at your next blood check, your next Prograf level check, go ahead and see, has there been any direct correlation now between the new supplement that I'm taking and perhaps my level going up and down? In addition to that, I would encourage you to be on the lookout for diet changes. And I know, like I'm using me for example, when I first came out of surgery, for whatever reason, my taste buds were off. So many of the foods that I used to enjoy, which mostly were bad, things like pizzas, chili dogs, cheeseburgers, that sort of thing. I don't really eat much anyway, but things like that were some of my favorites pre-transplant, right after transplant, I despised it, okay? Everything tasted really salty, and everything just tasted yuck. And so I know then my diet was a little bit different. Just out of transplant, pretty much nothing tasted right except for fruits and nuts. And so probably a healthier diet, but nonetheless, I ate a lot of fruits and nuts. As time wore on and my taste buds returned, I started going back to some of those foods. Maybe not pizza and hot dogs and cheeseburgers every day, but I started going back to some of those foods. So my diet changed, and therefore I think because of that, my Prograf level needed to be adjusted. And we worked with that. So just keep that in mind, that any changes that take place as far as medication or diet, that you note that. In addition to that, keep an eye out, and I've already mentioned this earlier in the video, keep an eye out for your exercise level, okay? Even the exercise that you put forth can definitely change at some point, incrementally and small, but yes, can change the Prograf levels. Straight out of transplant, I was in cardiac rehab, so I was in an intense exercise program. I was walking miles on treadmills, that sort of thing. Really sweating a lot, putting forth a lot of effort. To be honest with you, I've slacked off. I don't do quite that much anymore. My exercise program is not as intentional and intensive. So, maybe that adjusts my Prograf level out. So be sure to note that. In addition to that, even, let me add, and this is probably the most important, being sure that whenever it is that you take your Prograf medications is consistent, okay? And more times than not, doctors are going to encourage you to take that probably twice a day, and they're going to want that to be taken 12 hours apart. Exactly, okay? So don't take it, say, at 8 o'clock in the morning and take it at 7 o'clock at night. That's only an hour, but doing that every single day might knock something a little bit off, especially if you take it at, say, 7 o'clock at night, and then you turn around and go for your Prograf check at 10 o'clock the next morning. You see, that Prograf level is going to markedly be lower, probably, than it would have been if you'd been a little bit more consistent. So I try to remind everyone, try to be very strict in your medication rituals anyway. Try to keep those medications on the increments that they prescribe to you, which in most cases, for things like Prograf/tacrolimus, it's generic form, which I hadn't mentioned, but keep those 12 hours apart. So maybe 8 and 8 are your times. Maybe it's 9 and 9, maybe 10 and 10. But anyway, whatever works around your schedule best, keep that consistent. And then the other medications you might take during the day, which, for example, I only took a 9, 3, and 9 dose. So I took 3 p.m. doses, which weren't Prograf, just other supplements and stuff. Be sure that you're consistent in that, because all of these things can affect slightly those Prograf levels in your bloodstreams. Anyway, I appreciate you joining me today. If this video has helped you out in any way, please go ahead and encourage me by giving me a big thumbs up on the video. That just lets me know that these are the types of videos that you need and want, and I'll continue to make content like this. While you're doing that, right beneath this video every time you'll find a little subscribe button. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, perhaps even the bell notification off beside that. Is that way you'll be notified every time I try to put out content, which will hopefully help to advocate, educate, and motivate you as a transplant patient. And in addition to that, even, and I'll say in addition, don't I? In addition to that, again, comment below. Let me know what Prograf level you like to maintain. Now, if you want to put the doses out beside that, that's fine. You can say I take 10 milligrams and that keeps me at a 11 or whatever. But comment below, that'll help us out an awful lot. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, stay stronger, friends.